All right. Hello, everybody. I am Dr. Bailey Koch, and I am here today as a very, very, very proud instructor. So I am an instructor at the University of Nebraska at Kearney in the teacher education, special education department. Who I have here with me are three students who were required to do a presentation over an assigned disability. These three happened to draw the disability depression. And after presenting this presentation to our class last week, I asked these three lovely ladies to do the presentation again with no more incentive than to help other people. So this is me in my role as an instructor, a very proud instructor of these three ladies who did an unbelievably excellent job of explaining what depression is. So I felt like this was a great opportunity to take in order to give more awareness to what depression really is, because they have done such an excellent job of making this information objective. So very proud. That being said, I am going to mute myself and I am going to turn this presentation over to Bailey Roeder, Kaylee Kathman, and Destiny Toole, three students in TE 204, Growth and Development / Introduction to Exceptionalities at the University of Nebraska at Kearney. All right, ladies.
So, like she said, my name is Bailey Roeder, and then we also have Destiny Toole and Kaylee Kathman here. And we're going to talk about a little bit about what depression is. So, if you don't know what depression is a mood disorder that causes a persistent feeling of sadness and loss of interest.
Not only does depression affect how you feel, but it can also affect how you think and behave.
And this is common in most cases, but depression can be different for everyone. The Rule 51 that it falls under is emotional disturbance. So in my words, if a child has a disorder that inhibits the learning of a child in a way that's not intellectual, sensory, or health related, then that child qualifies for special education services under emotional disturbance.
For me personally, what emotional disturbance means is that an emotional disturbance is a disruption of how someone would regularly act or respond, causing harm in different areas of life due to serious emotional interference.
And finally, for me, I summarized it as a child may be showing characteristics such as mood swings, fear over problems, whether those problems are big or small, the inability to learn, and many more characteristics. If these are present over a long period of time, then they may be classified as having an emotional disturbance and qualify for more extensive services in the classroom and at school. So physical characteristics of depression, there are many of them, but we just kind of summarized the ones that we thought would fit well with this presentation. So usually a individual with depression can operate normally, but they just may show that they are tired or unmotivated. They may appear tired because of the quality of sleep they had or the lack of. Another physical characteristic of depression is self-harm. These could include many different, they could include cuts, burns, pinching, or scratching themselves. The marks of self-harm aren't all the same for every individual, and they can look very different. And significant weight loss or weight gain. A frequent cause for depression can include body image issues, and this can lead to undereating or overeating in an individual.
Going on with physical characteristics, an individual with depression or a student with depression can also be appeared to have been crying a lot, or they may not cry at all. Depression includes overwhelming thoughts of sadness or hopelessness, and this can lead to outbursts of tears or blocking off emotions that you need to feel and not allowing yourself that release. A long-term effect of depression can also be chronic illness. So this results in aches and pains within the body. Like I said, depression magnifies pain on the inside of the mind and on the outside. So this means that it can also be paired with actual physical aches and pains within the body. An individual with depression also might experience that their immunity is not as well as compared to other individuals. So stress can make someone's immune system work poorly. This means that they're more likely to get sick, or it might be more difficult for them to fight off sickness, or it might be easier for them to become infected. So it can affect their immune system. And lastly, for me, is sleeping problems. An individual with depression can also have trouble sleeping. This can mean that they sleep way too often or they don't sleep enough, or when that they wake up, they don't feel refreshed as they should when they get sleep.
Okay, and then moving on to social characteristics of depression. So a person with depression could have random or constant lack of interest in anything that they do. A person could want to withdraw from their family or friends, or just anything, any social event at all. They could also have decreased performance at work or school. So they may just want to stop trying when it comes to work or school because their judgment has now become cloudy. So they don't any longer see what's important to them. And then the last one for me is substance abuse. So although it's also a possible cause of depression, it can also be something that someone with depression tries to use as a coping mechanism for their depression.
For the behavioral and emotional characteristics of depression, an individual may have mood swings. Depression can cause overwhelming thoughts that individuals may not know how to handle properly, and this can result in outbursts of emotions towards themselves or towards other people. And if it's towards other people, it may have nothing to do with them at all. It can also cause psychological stress. Usually, people stress over big things and little things, and it might be more important to them than it may seem to others. And then strong thoughts of negative self-worth. This kind of goes with the mood swings as well. So thoughts of sadness, hopelessness, and self-criticism are usually higher in people with depression. And it's easier for them to like slip into those negative thoughts as compared to another person without depression.
Like I said before, an individual with depression can experience excessive sleeping or insomnia. And because of lack of sleep and not feeling refreshed when you wake up, it may enhance other side effects that we're going to talk about. And as Kaylee said before, they can also experience a poor appetite or overeating. Because of this and lack of interest, you may lose a lack of interest to sleep, or on the other side, psychological stress can lead to overeating and weight gain because of the body image issues that we talked about before. And finally, with withdrawal from activities, a person with depression may withdraw from things that they once found pleasurable, but now they may lose all interest in all activities that they once participated in.
Okay, and then some language characteristics. So they tend to use more negative adverbs and adjectives such as lonely or sad or miserable. And they tend to use more first person words and less second or third. So they use more words like um, I, me, myself, and not they, them, or he, she, we.
Moving on to the cognitive characteristics of depression, a student specifically a student with depression can experience concentration impairment, which means that in the classroom they may be distracted by a lot of things, or they may not be able to focus on anything, which can lead to concentration impairment. It's very hard for an individual with depression to concentrate on one subject or anything outside of their own head, and that's important to recognize as an educator. They also might experience the inability to make complex or simple decisions, or they may make mountains out of molehills or molehills out of mountains, and they might not be able to make those elaborate decisions for themselves.
So the next one is negative or distorted thinking. So a person with depression may have distorted thinking because they don't like the way they look or the way that depression makes them feel. And then another one is forgetfulness. So they tend to be more forgetful because again, the chemicals in their brain are off, so it just affects the way they think.
And finally, the last two characteristics of the cognitive side of depression is reduced reaction time. So an individual may have a slower reaction response to things happening around them. And finally, memory loss, which kind of goes off of Destiny's forgetfulness. Depression has been linked to short-term memory loss, and it seems the more severe the depression and how long you've been battling with depression, the more memory loss problems you can have compared to just like forgetfulness.
So now we're going to talk about causes of depression, and I want to clarify that depression is not the same for everyone, and we're going to reiterate that many times throughout this presentation. Causes, symptoms, and effects of depression can impact everybody differently. So I'm just going to go over some go over a few of the main ones that we think are really important, starting with trauma. If you experience trauma, especially when you're younger during those developmental periods or during sensitive periods of your life, you're more likely to develop depression later on. Another thing is over excessive stress or worry are also going to hurt your mood, and they are also going to affect you later on. Another cause of depression could be early loss or medical issues, and specifically personal events because research recognizes that large upheavals or disruptions in life are a likely cause for depression. One more thing that I'd like to mention is that if you have certain personality traits, it may make you more prone to depression. So if you have low self-esteem of yourself or you're overly critical of yourself, you may be more prone to depression.
All right, and then moving on, another one that we thought was very important was genetics. So experts believe that 50% of depression stems from your genetics. So if you have a parent or sibling with depression, your risk is 2 to 3 times greater than it is for someone without that family history. Conflict would also be another one that could cause depression. Major events, even positive ones like starting a new job or graduating or getting married, can lead to depression. And so can moving or losing a job or your income or getting divorced or retiring. Other personal problems could also cause depression, and substance abuse is another one. So 30% of people with substance abuse problems also have major or clinical depression. So even if drugs or alcohol temporarily help you feel better, they will aggravate the depression in the long run. And then the last one for me is serious illness. So sometimes depression coexists with a major illness or may be triggered by another medical condition.
As Destiny kind of said, divorce could be under the major events category that could cause depression, but we thought it was important to note that not only can the adults that are getting a divorce have depression, even if it's a mutual separation, but also if you have children, it can cause depression in them having the family go separate ways. Financial problems and living in poverty can cause depression. I think you could see a lot of the financial problems influencing it, especially during the pandemic when a lot of things were shut down or closed or people lost their jobs. Infertility is another cause of depression. And it's not just for the female who cannot get pregnant, your partner could also experience depression. And after delivery, postpartum depression is a huge kind of like common thing for women that just have a baby. And finally, abusive relationships can cause depression.
So there tend to be a lot of myths or beliefs about depression that we wanted to kind of cover. So Kaylee and Destiny are going to talk about what's true about depression and what are some common beliefs in society today about depression.
So here are some common beliefs. Depression is all in your head.
But in reality, it's not just emotional. You cannot simply just turn it off.
Depression must be medicated.
There are actually multiple ways to treat depression, and it can be different for everyone.
Everyone goes through depression.
Depression is not a phase of growing up that everyone experiences.
And finally, depression is just being really sad.
Unlike sadness, depression lasts longer and does not usually go away on its own.
So now we're going to cover some of the extensive information that we think that you should know about depression, starting with one of the things that I focused on a lot in my project was the developmental side of depression, how it can hurt you in the long run. So regarding depression and development, depression can cause harm towards important relationships among home life, family life, friends, etc. And we'll talk about that a little bit more with Destiny. But it can also progress towards long-term depression after adolescence if it's found early on and not treated or treated correctly. Being around depression can also be a cause for a child to pick up depression. It's not necessarily contagious, but especially in sensitive developmental areas, children do a monkey see, monkey do concept that can help them pick it up as more of a personality trait, and it still needs to be treated later on. It's also important to note that children are more prone to depression during puberty. So because estrogen and testosterone are consistently linked to depression, researchers have found that during puberty, when testosterone and estrogen levels are raised, adolescents are more prone to have depression than if you were an adult who had already lived your life. So along with physical and emotional aspects, stress can also build up a child's extents to have a chance of depression.
Okay, and then moving on to home life and relationships. So home life can also be incredibly difficult for a child with depression. So it could be your parents fighting, or you have overbearing parents and they're part of your cause, or the student might put too much pressure on themselves to perform well in activities at school. And depression can hurt relationships due to mood swings or lack of motivation to be around people. And then moving on to school, depression can make learning more of a chore than it is enjoyable to a student, and it can make it more difficult. So your lack of motivation or interest can cause your child or adolescent to not want to further their education or activities that they once enjoyed. And depression can be used, or it can also cause a concentration impairment, making it harder for people to learn or find school enjoyable or comfortable. So the social aspects also come into play here when students find it difficult to get along with peers or teachers, and they're struggling during assignments or tests.
I focused more on the finances. So while any disability can be a financial burden, depression can vary on price because of different medications or therapy that you might use. Therapy costs on average from $20 to $250 per session, and antidepressants, depending on how much and what kind you take, can cost an average of $40 to $75 a month. It's also very important to note that a lot of insurances don't cover either therapy or medications. You also might have to try a few medications because not all antidepressants work for each individual. Like we stated many times, depression is very different for others, and that can cause you to take different medications or paramedications and therapy to help you the most.
So regarding your future, if you are an individual with depression, it can cause chronic illness, mental illness, financial issues, career issues, relationship issues, and it can lead to a cycle of more depression if it's not treated or not treated correctly. Additionally, depression comes from many forms, and it can be long-term. It might not be for everybody, but it can be, and it affects critical aspects in life that influence us as people, therefore hurting the way we usually think, act, react, or feel.
And then on a very serious note, untreated, undiagnosed, or mistreated depression can lead to suicide, self-harm, or substance abuse.
Okay, and then moving on to accommodations for your student with depression. So in the classroom, you could embrace diversity in the classrooms for those with those psychiatric needs. You could allow frequent breaks from the classroom, and to go along with that, seating near the door may help allow them to leave the classroom without any distraction to the other students in the room. You could also allow them to use a tape recorder so they can go back and look at it in like later after the assignment has already been taught. And feedback, private feedback for a student with depression is better than maybe public feedback because they already feel bad about themselves. So just adding that on could be just a little bit more of a thing to them. And then for tests, you could allow the test to be taken in different formats. For example, you could take it orally, and you could also give them extra time to complete their test. And you could allow the student to take a test in a separate, more quiet environment, and that might just help them a little bit more.
So assignments and tests, the accommodations for both are very similar. I think kind of like Destiny said, if it's easier to handwrite an assignment over doing it on a computer, let that exception for that student. Just having extended time, as stated before, one of the causes can be like you're just not motivated. So it's not that they don't want to complete assignments or that they put it off till the end. It's just that they physically don't have the energy to complete them. So just having that extension available for them. And finally, for me, instructional. So it's important to know, even if a student with depression was in your class or not, all students have different learning styles. So you will have to kind of adapt to all of them so that they can have the best learning environment possible. And there's actually experiential learning activities. This mostly involves music. There's a lot of research being done between how music affects people with depression.
Moving on, this part gets a little bit more serious, but if you are a educator and you have a student with depression, it is important to realize that for some students, you may be that only source of help. So, regarding seeking help, you can allow them to get the proper counseling that they need. You can allow them to show emotions properly in your classroom and allow them to experience adult coping methods, even at a young age, because they may not be getting that guidance at home. So it's important to find a common ground with your students and make sure that they understand that they are understood and they are loved and they are wanted in your classroom. Another important thing to recognize is that between home life and school, the parents may not recognize that their child has depression, or if they do, then they may not know how to experience that or help them correctly. And that's okay if you don't either, because that's why we have people who are subjective and who are objective and who are meant to help students with that kind of thing. So opening up communication between the teacher and the parents, or the school and the parents, is very important. And one of the things that I found most helpful was the idea of a homeschool notebook. So what you would do is you would write down progress between how this child did at home versus how they did at school, and compare. You would figure out what was working and what wasn't, and you'd be able to make progress from there. So this is our last little bit of information, and this is just other stuff that we want you to know. So as we said before, there are a lot of differentiations between people and how they experience depression, how they react to depression, etc. But I also want you to know that there are different forms of therapy and medication. So regarding that, for therapy, there's cognitive, behavioral, interpersonal, psychodynamic, and blended, which is a mix of different types of therapy. And moving on, there are also multiple forms of depression that an individual can experience, including clinical, persistent depressive disorder, bipolar, bipolar 2, and postpartum.
So depression can be a reoccurring disease and can be considered long-term or temporary, and it can be caused by other illnesses.
Like we stated before, it's important to take steps to control your stress and to have those healthy coping mechanisms. Those mechanisms can also help an individual boost their self-esteem, which may affect their mood. So it may increase their mood and they might not have as many mood swings. Also, if you are an individual who doesn't have an adult to go to, or if you don't feel like that you can be fully open with them, we did include this hotline at the bottom that you can call and receive help.
So this is the part of the presentation in class where we asked anybody if they had any questions, but if you guys have any questions for Dr. Koch, she can answer them in the comments.
And now everybody understands why I had my students do the presentation instead of me. So, and again, Bailey, Kaylee, and Destiny, this presentation has not gotten old to me because I have heard it a couple of times now, once in class and now in this. And I just want to again reiterate how proud I am of you. This was very objective, very accurate information showing how different depression can be for everybody. As you heard them say multiple times, depression is different for every single person. And so all of the information that you heard about are possibilities for any individual. Doesn't mean everybody is going to experience all of it. Doesn't mean everybody is going to experience even very little of it. We don't know, but these are all possibilities and showing you how depression can affect an individual's life. So we are calling this an awareness presentation for advocates and educators, because as I said earlier in this recording, these three are future teachers. And I think you can all agree with me that they are going to be awesome future teachers. So very proud. Thank you again, ladies. I will get this posted and we're going to get some more awareness out about what depression is all about for the rest of the world. So if we could do a round of applause, that would be fabulous, but we can't. So, well done. And thank you, ladies, for everything that you did. I'm very proud of you. All right. We will see you all later.
Bye.
Bye.